This week on New to You Show, Personal Obsession Part 3, Apple. Welcome back to the New to You Show. I am one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week,
Julian Cage.
Keith Vincent.
And back,
Special guest,
Eddy Vallante.
All right, Eddy.
Welcome back, Eddy.
So Eddy is joining us for the third of our personal obsession episodes, where we dig in deep on one of our personal obsessions that are brought to the New to You forum, where we bring up stuff that the others may not have had access to, so it may be new to them, or maybe we've all heard it, seen it, read it, whatever, but it's
hopefully new to somebody out there.
New to somebody out there. That's the goal. Or, you haven't thought of it in a while, and so you get a new perspective on it.
There you go. Maybe you've seen it a million times, but you're like, hey, Julian likes this because of all the butts in it, so maybe I need to look at it through them eyes.
Yeah. Maybe I need to watch the show naked.
Give me a whole new perspective, Jules. Thanks.
All right. So, Eddy, what's been new to you this week?
This week I've dove deep into Kickstarter, and that's because I am helping a director prep a Kickstarter campaign, and I have never done a Kickstarter. I've supported a few for friends, but kind of just doing it more to support a fellow filmmaker as they try and move their ball down the field. But this week I've spent a lot of time just going through other people's Kickstarters, random Kickstarters, just like it's a thing. A lot of people are doing it. It's like as popular. It's starting to feel like it's as popular as posting things to Facebook and Twitter. And I just thought that I should know this. It's like a beast. I feel like I need to dive into the belly of this beast and try to understand it. And so this week, I've been looking at a lot of strategies, because it seems like strategies.
You've been researching.
It seems like there's like.
So have you figured out I'm sure you've seen that there are certain.
There's ways to increase your odds of having a successful.
Have you kind of figured out a formula that might work, or you're on to one?
It looks like there's a variety of things. I mean, if you have like a celebrity attached or any sort of like promotional branding material that you can use to your advantage, seems like a thing. But if you are sort of relatively unknown artists and you're not really creating a new fancy device that a lot of people will want to immediately buy off of Amazon, I think you have to put a lot of thinking into how is this campaign going to roll out. I can only specifically have like some thoughts on raising money for like films and stuff. I haven't checked out too many other Kickstarters.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head for me as far as what the main problem with Kickstarter is.
I would love to hear. I'm very curious, because I have a lot of negative. My every cell in my body is sort of kind of is like making me want to not do this, but I feel like I have to.
I think you should. But my problem with Kickstarter is it's not useful for people that it should be useful for, like artists, like filmmakers, independent people who are literally trying to use Kickstarter to do what it was built for.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like to reach people that would be interested in it. But it's become like this device that's just help make people with all kinds of resources get free resources from other people.
Right. Exactly.
That's what I really hate about it.
I mean, I'm to play devil's advocate a little bit. I think it's just gone mainstream. It's reached a peak enough level. And I think you always hear about what makes news, what gets passed around are the big things, the things that already are from known properties that get millions of dollars.
Right.
But,
like Veronica Mars, which is the largest film one.
And so there's a lot of Kickstarter backlash after some of these, for that reason. But at the same time, like everyone and Kickstarter, but a lot of other smaller Kickstarters have said that it's good for everyone because it just brings more people to Kickstarter.
Right. All boats rise in the tide.
Once you have an account, like you probably, if you were, a fan of Veronica Mars. If you're a fan of Veronica Mars, then you probably were like, oh, like I'm gonna join Kickstarter. I'm gonna give money to this because like I love this show and I already know what it is and I know exactly what I'm getting, etc. And then you've signed up, and then once you've signed up, you get all these emails, you get these featured projects, and you're every now and then you're like, oh, that looks really cool.
And you're like, oh, this is so annoying. I never want to use Kickstarter again because they email me twice a week.
Well, you can turn those notifications up. No, I don't know. I'm one of these people that once in a blue moon something catches my eye and I'll end up kickstarting something. And it's been anywhere from a lot of gadgets, but also just other random things like comic books and.
And how is it coming across your plate? Is it coming through Twitter or Facebook? Or you're seeing other people?
All of the above.
Are you going? Are you going to Kickstarter.com and just combing through campaigns?
All of the above. Yeah. I mean, a lot of what brings me back is that you have some campaigns that you've kickstarted something and it'll literally take them 2 years. It'll take them 2 years to get back to you. So every 4 months there'll be an update. So you'll go to the site to see what's going on, or you have to fill out a form or something. And then when you're there, you'll see other related or featured projects or whatever, and that'll get you in.
And they also, good campaigns tend to seek out the communities who are going to invest in them. So Veronica Mars, they're putting it out. They didn't have to go too far afield, but the forums that people still talk about Veronica Mars, the places where people were already into it, were the ones they were hitting first, and then the trades and the other aspects. So for board game stuff, there are board game sites that people go to, and that's where they tend to promote their board game Kickstarters, to the point where there become so many of those that there become subsections of websites that are board game Kickstarters.
That brings up a great point, that I feel like a challenge for filmmakers is majority of your fellow peers and fellow filmmakers are in the same boat that you're in, that don't have any money, and so casting out the net to friends and family is you can only go back to that well so many times. You really want to go back to that well so many times. So
that's why you go to Kickstarter and not to your friend's blog.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's trying to figure out, well, where can you put this campaign, or where can you put your pitch in front of an audience that is outside of the film world. So I've been trying to brainstorm a lot on that in terms of the subject matter of project. And it's we could, if we got great press on IndieWire, my assumption is, it'll be hundreds of people that are in the same boat that we are, that don't have any money, that can't really, they can only contribute $5 to this thing. And
that's why documentaries may be so successful on Kickstarter, is that you can say, this is about this subject matter, we're going to go to the people who care about that subject matter and tap that resource, versus this is a narrative, you guys like stories, right? Kind of, that's a harder thing to narrow as an audience.
And that's sort of the angle that we're trying to figure out how we can come up with a clever way of sort of marketing it, that a lot of original ideas are not being produced by studios today. It's incredibly, the movies that or a lot of the media, pop culture media that we've sort of referenced from the 70s and 80s, they were investing a lot into that, and it's not the same today. So you kind of almost need Kickstarter to start to build that audience, so you can
except it's not used for that, sadly.
Right.
That's not what people are getting funded.
Right.
Yeah. You get Veronica Mars, which was already a TV show.
There's a lot of small projects that get funded, tons and tons and tons, that you haven't heard of because it's not Veronica Mars.
And that I did learn is that there's so much outside of my radar.
And there's some medium-sized projects. There was a game that was a horror game that they were working on for a while, and they were kind of funding internally with this company, and they're like, well, we're this far along talking to other people in the horror gaming community about this horror narrative. They actually spoke to the guy who owned the Friday the 13th property, and he was like, I've been waiting for a game to give this to, we'll give it to you. And they're like, well, now we need to go back and reskin this whole thing and repurpose it towards being more Friday the 13th, and so we need capital to reinvent this thing a little. But it's something where they have the property, they have the people connected to it, and they have some product already that it's just a matter of saying, hey, this is where we want to take this. If you believe in it, toss in your money. And that was one I didn't back, but it's an interesting concept for a game where one person is Jason and everyone else plays people at sleepaway camp who are trying to survive Jason.
Yeah.
And it's sort of it's basically digital hide and seek.
I understand, but that to me is you've got Friday the 13th on your side already. You don't, Kickstarter's already, that's not in your realm anymore, in my opinion. I'm sorry, that's not what it's for. I mean, obviously I'm wrong because people use it like that, but that to me is just the man has figured out the secret. And so they're we're not going to take a chance. We're going to have these jerks give us money. We'll give them a t-shirt and we'll fund our thing.
But it's not the man. It's not the man. The thing is, the people...
The owners of the Friday the 13th franchise is not the man? I don't know who the man is.
No, they are the man. But I'm saying the people making the weird board game is
Right.
not the man.
Or
The
the
man
video
does not
game,
want to give them money to
Right.
make that because
Somebody gives money to board
because
game
so-
manufacturers. Somewhere, someone invests in
this
games
is,
and toys.
This was a video game, but board game wise, it's an expensive low margin where basically most board game designers have a second job. You know what I mean? Or it is their hobby job, and so that it's not a big high value market already. And this is basically saying this is an expensive production pipeline. If we get this many pre-orders / people who are interested in this game, we'll go out. I do agree. There's some criticism in that this is an untested product. Right. And so you're basically getting people to invest in a game that maybe shouldn't sell as many copies as it's going to, or is not baked enough to do
Right.
that.
And see, to me, there are certain things where there are already channels to test this out. You know what I mean? It's like, so part of the thing is getting investment is kind of a test for the viability of this certain product. And if you have somebody like, if you have a franchise on your side, like the Friday the 13th people, then you've already gotten into another echelon. If you're a creative person who is looking to be in a community with other creative people and become a community and help one another create art, I feel like that's what I feel like the beginning of Kickstarter was, and that's what I missed. That's all. I just think that I feel like the secret's out. The going to Kickstarter is a funding strategy that exists that people who make media utilize. Now that's like step one in the man's funding.
I was sort of wrote this down because I was like, wow, for us to take this campaign seriously, like we invested a lot of time and money into our pitch video.
Exactly.
And so I was like, wow, we produced a short film about the short film that we want to make, so that we can use that short film to make a longer film. Those are all the steps that we have to take to just make.
And it still might not work,
right?
Because no one's ever heard of you guys.
Right.
But I guess the idea is that Kickstarter, Indiegogo, these kind of marketing setups are built so that you aren't making a pitch to make a pilot to go through the studio system, which could take as much time and not go anywhere. You are making a pitch to sell it to the world, which more and more people are part of this system.
Yeah, right.
Because there are so many things out there, you're still vying against your blockbusters, just like you would in the studio system, but you're just doing it without a producer.
You're just doing it with the scale stacked against you, just like in all the traditional funding situations.
But less so, and there's fewer gatekeepers. Like you have a chance at least. You're not just gonna have an executive say no.
Right.
And that's it.
And you may get more material that is less compromised from the vision of the original thing. But the other side of that, you're going to get less eyes on the work that maybe should be there to develop it. That's the give and take.
Yeah. And it is true that like there are some people who are very good at, because in a way, like people who succeed on Kickstarter, you have to know how to make
game Kickstarter.
Yeah, and also just how to market yourself. You know what I mean? And market what
I'm
you're trying to do.
There are whole teams of people in companies that are like,
there are, yeah.
Yeah, we're the Kickstarter team.
Yeah, like if you're a tech company and you just know how to build this tech product and you suck at making a video, you're going to hire, nowadays they'll hire a team to help them make their video. Yeah. And, but I mean, then again, they're creating an ecosystem. They're hiring a bunch of people to make those videos.
And there are people at Kickstarter whose job it is to help you manage and grow your project. Mm-hmm. So you'll have guys who are in charge, like Luke Crane is the guy who's in charge of board games and tabletop gaming at Kickstarter. He'll be the one to interact with you, especially as your campaign gets better and more, involved, to make sure he's supposed to be the mentor for those projects. And so they have people who are specific, for music, there are people, for film, there are people.
Yeah, we have
a liaison.
Yes.
But I think to your point about going back to the well, friends and family and all that, like I was thinking about it, all the film projects that I've backed have all been friends and family. Or it's like sometimes they're just like loose. It's like it's somebody I see once every couple of years kind of friend. You know what I mean? But it's like, if they put together a Kickstarter pitch and they're serious about the project and like it looks like a good project, I'm like, I'm gonna throw in $20. You know what I mean? Like, why not? But if they had come to me personally and asked me for $20, I would have felt weird about that.
Yes.
So I think like
It works as a tool in that way where it is sort of helping you.
Yeah, and if your budget's low enough, like if you can get 100 friends of friends to give you $20, sometimes that's enough, you know? And like I think it's awesome to have that tool. But yeah, the downside, like the tricky part is like some people kind of go into it blind and like get swamped because like actually making and running the campaign.
Yeah, there's a lot of work.
Yeah, and if you're not careful, like because I remember a lot of really successful Kickstarter campaigns got really burned because like their rewards were so time consuming and expensive to fulfill, and at that time there were no like now there's all these fulfillment centers, all these systems in place to help people with that stuff. But back then there's people who were like basically by the end of it like they broke even.
Right,
They have
like
another
victims of
job.
their own
They have
success.
a whole other job to do.
Right. Yeah.
And they barely broke even. They had a successful thing, but like they made no money.
Right,
Yeah.
like because they spent all their money shipping the products out.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a huge, the second highest video Kickstarter is running as we record right now, which is for the Mystery Science Theater Kickstarter, and he's attached a ton of names to it. And maybe Keith, this is
How much is he trying to raise?
So his initial goal was initial goal was 2.2.
Yeah, so they hit that.
$1 million.
2.2 million, and he has a whole breakdown of how it would be spent out. Kickstarter takes their cut, then it's rewards, then it's production, and then whatever's left, and there won't be much left. So like he's got a pie chart that shows you how it's going to all get spent, and the more money he gets, the more episodes they'll make. So right as of now, they're halfway through. They're at 3.3, which means they'll make 6 episodes, and if they hit their major goal, they'll make, which is 5.5, they'll make 12 episodes.
And part of the strategy too is they're like, hey, if enough people are so stoked about this to give us this much money to make more episodes, then maybe like say Netflix will be like, hey, maybe people want this, and we'll give them money to make more.
But here's my question about that. Okay, and I love Mystery Science Theater, and I love Joel Hodgson, but I bet you if they went to Netflix right now, they could get their own show on Netflix.
I think they tried already.
I think you're absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong.
No, because they
so
said that
hungry for content.
But they said that in their thing that they were like they're hoping that through this that they'll see
That's
there's
a part
enough
of that,
interest.
That's just dangling the meat in front of the snapping dogs that are the users of Kickstarter. Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Maybe it's to give them more leverage to get more money.
Because
they're like,
whatever
hey,
the case,
because maybe they can be like, hey, we can do this on our
Mystery
own.
Science Theater could get a show on right now, anytime they want.
It's
They
been
do not
15.
need
It's been
Kickstarter.
off the air for 15 years.
Yeah.
It's been and
they have had at least 6 years worth of history of having live shows that are extremely successful. They have more than enough.
I know that. I mean, they said the reason they're doing a campaign now is they just were able to get the rights back. Basically, they weren't
that's a big one.
Yeah.
They didn't own the property at the
Right,
time.
but they could be Mystery Fantasy Theater 3000 if they went before getting the rights back. You know what I mean?
Riff Tracks.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Well,
yeah.
and I think the other side of this too is that they're using Kickstarter and not as the funding vehicle, but as the marketing vehicle.
Right.
So it's sort of saying,
right, it's gaming it for the purpose, not for the
And
original intended purpose.
But I think that's okay because
It's totally necessary.
Yeah, I think I still think it's part of this. It's part of that ecosystem.
It's not necessary. It's low hanging fruit for the man. That's what I'm saying. Low hanging fruit for the man. It
should be called Man Starter.
No, it's another revenue stream for people who already have a revenue stream. That's all.
It's also another place for people who have money to spend money.
Yeah. Some people do like to just spend money on random things.
This guy right here.
Speaking of which, let's talk about our personal obsessions.
Oh, yeah,
Julian,
Jules,
you got
you were the one
this
who
week.
brought it up.
You're on the plate now.
Oh, jeez.
Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these in the world. In 1984, we introduced the Mac. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry.
So I really tried hard to think of a different personal obsession, but they're just because I'm not really proud of my obsession.
Right.
But there just wasn't really anything else in my life that comes anywhere close. And so my personal obsession is Apple. And by Apple, I don't mean the fruit. I mean the computer company or whatever they are now. They used to be Apple Computer. Now they're just Apple Incorporated, whatever. And yeah, so that's my obsession. And so I'm obsessed with obviously buying their products. But more than that, it's like reading about it. I subscribe to like at least a dozen blogs that are all related, or sites that are related to Apple news, etc. And I also, you
live stream the
events.
events.
I live stream the events. They're like,
you give us the play-by-play.
Yeah, I've told people that they're like my Super Bowl. And actually, the more I thought about it, the more like there's a lot of sports analogy. I really follow them like a team. And
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of. And if you think back, there was also like for a while there was the whole like Apple versus PC, like Microsoft, like Windows versus Mac OS kind of thing. So there's always been kind of in tech this kind of like diehard followers and all this stuff. And I was kind of thinking about the history of the company. And for a while they started out strong, but then they became the underdog. And for years, for like a couple decades, they were the underdog. And so
you were using them, and they were still the underdog.
Yeah, so you were rooting for the underdog, and now it's sort of like they've become like the biggest company in the world. They're making more money than oil companies, which is ridiculous. And so now all of a sudden you went from rooting for the underdog to now you've got the like
now you're rooting for God.
Yeah, and they they've won the Super Bowl 5 years in a row, and so it's hard to feel good about rooting for them.
Well, as a Patriots fan, I can tell you, I can relate.
Yeah, and then you've got stuff like Deflatorgate and stuff, and you're like. You kind of start to feel dirty about but you can't help yourself, and you still follow them. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And I would say it did start like I've always used Macs. I feel like as a company, I think from the very beginning, they've shaped personal computing, whatever that means to you. But I feel like they've really led the way, and then had other people follow them and copy them. And for a long time, like they kind of set the stage, and then Windows, like Microsoft, beat them at their own game and won the market share.
I'm not an expert, but I think aren't they credited for creating the first mass marketed home?
Are you talking about
Apple?
Yeah, definitely, yes, yeah. I mean, the original. I'm not as good with the '80s stuff because I wasn't computing at that time. I mean, like
the Apple II or the Apple.
Yeah, the Apple II was like really like the huge product. Then the Mac was a big deal, but the first Macintosh. But I don't think it actually made them that much money, surprisingly, because I think it ended up being more expensive than they wanted it to be, etc. But it had a huge influence, and it did make computing and computers seem more friendly.
Yeah, a lot of the things we take for granted, like folders.
Yeah.
Trash can,
Yeah.
just in the use of the interface of a computer. I mean, even using a mouse, the way we use a mouse, it all came from Apple.
They get too much credit, I think, for some of it. In a way, they didn't invent most of that stuff. It was already out there, but they were always the ones to recognize, like...
They put it to purpose.
Yeah, they saw the potential in it, and they actually managed to make it a marketable product, which is harder than it would seem. And then everyone else jumps on the bandwagon, and then it seems obvious and of course and etc. What else? But I think for me, what really like turned it from an interest to an obsession was the iPhone. And I think at the time, like I was like, I've always been a big nerd and always been into sci-fi, into like gadgets and kind of the future kind of stuff. And when around the time that I'd had a cell phone for a while, and I was starting to get interested in smartphones, which at the time were not that much fun. We'll put it that way. They were definitely like very nerdy. And then I started like hearing rumors about this, that Apple might be working on a phone and it was going to be a big deal and all this stuff. And the iPod was huge at the time. So, they seemed, so people were thinking, oh, well, it'll be like an iPod that's a phone. And, there was all these rumors. And that's also another big part of the whole Apple mystique, yeah, is that they're especially since when Steve Jobs came back to the company, like he's a super, kind of paranoid, secretive person, and also like just a master marketer. So they're super secret, and no one knows what they're going to do. None of their partners know what's going to happen. They find out when we do, which is annoying in a lot of ways. But it also leads to all this speculation. You can speculate, so that's how all these rumor sites have popped up. Like macrumors.com is sort of like, I think, the best that sort of like catches all the rumors that are popping up and puts them together in a non-crazy way, I guess. And
how often are they right, like with their forecasting?
well, I mean, they write about like Apple related news, which now there's a lot more of because the ecosystem is so huge. And there's, if they're not writing about rumors, they can review apps, they can review accessories. So there's always they
Plenty
post
of content.
Yeah, they probably have at least 5 posts a day. You know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
and it's not just all rumors now. I mean, Mac Rumors is about kind of like just news stories about.
Yeah, it'll be
Apple
news,
products.
but rumors are definitely a part of it, and there's kind of ebbs and flow in the cycle because basically, like as the lead up, so the Worldwide Developers Conference is Apple's Super Bowl where they make the big announcements every year. That's when all the developers are there. Well, actually now they have a couple. So they have the Developers Conference. That's when they make most of their software updates, and then if there's anything that's going to affect software, they'll sometimes announce it. Then that's usually in June, and then in the fall they usually have the new iPhone announcements, and sometimes they'll roll in other stuff. And so those are kind of the two big like Apple events, and leading up to those, that's when the like rumor mill frenzy goes like crazy because now they start to get leaks from suppliers or other software companies.
Sometimes a dude will just leave it in the bathroom at the bar.
Exactly. yeah. There was a guy who was testing an iPhone and he left it at the bar and somebody got it and they sold it to a journalist, and the journalist ended up writing about it, and like Apple ended up suing him and putting.
No, there was a raid on the guy's house or something.
Yeah,
right?
they sent because I think. Because basically it was a stolen item, and he bought a stolen item and then wrote about it. So they were like, Apple was super pissed and stuff. So it's a lot of drama. That was exciting news,
Yeah, it was.
Wait, and that was for what, the iPhone 6?
No, it was previous to that. I think it might have been the 4. The 4 or 5 or something.
Well, which one was the big jump? The big jump was...
I think the 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when it became the metal and glass. So going back to the iPhone, so there was a lot of rumors going into it, and so I watched the live announcement, which was in January, which was kind of random because basically there was like some long FCC approval process. So they knew it was going to get leaked through that process because you have to get approval for any telecommunication devices. So they decided to preempt and just announce it like 6 months ahead of schedule because it wasn't going to go on sale until June. And so I watched this announcement, and it like pretty much like blew my mind. I was just like, they were really ahead of the curve. There had been some demos in the previous couple of years of like touch-enabled interfaces, and I think Microsoft made those giant tabletop Surface, but that was like, cost thousands of dollars and didn't really seem all that like practical.
Useful.
Yeah, and but there had been some really cool tech demos of like some like MIT lab people who had done cool touch interface stuff. So, and Minority Report might have come out or something, but it seemed like 10 years away kind of thing. And all of a sudden they've got this pocket thing that's all touch enabled, and it's a phone that can surf the internet. Like at the time, like now it's like everybody owns one, and it's like
we take it for granted.
Yeah, now like your 2-year-olds play with them, to distract them and all that stuff. But at the time, it was just like, wow, I am living in the future. And so I was like so stoked. And so then I just started, those 6 months were the longest 6 months of my life. And I was just like rapidly reading everything I could about it. And that's when I got into found all these websites and all these journalists. There's this guy who's sort of like the grandfather of like Apple journalism. His name is John Gruber. And he was just a journalist, like a writer who went on his own to write about Apple. And it was around the time Steve Jobs came back and they started to make a comeback, and so there was more and more interest in them, and he was able to like start blogging full time just on that. So it was also like the golden age of blogging as well. That's why a lot of people were able to do it for a living, which is now sort of dying off just because of Facebook and stuff like that.
Microblogging is killing regular blogging.
Right. And also just like now, it's like finding blogs and reading them is kind of a hard nerdy thing that never went mainstream. And now people but yes, and then I ended up, I was one of the dumbasses who was waiting in line, on launch day with another nerd friend of mine. And so I got the original iPhone on day one, and the rest is history. And it was as good as it looked. That was the other part.
that was the thing that always shocked me about it.
Yeah.
And Jules was the first one to be like, you guys got to get this. I mean, he was super enthusiastic, but the touch function worked like head and shoulders better than I would have ever imagined.
Yeah.
Like it's something, again, we already take for granted today, but like, you know, I just remember when doesn't even have a real keyboard. You got to push the glass. That's never going to work. You know what I mean? Like everyone was thinking these things because they have their flip phones, and Jules was like, no, you put your thumb there and it works. It just works. And the man's right.
Yeah, it was wild. And it's crazy to think like the first like year, maybe 2 years, they weren't even other apps. It was just like the built-in stuff. And it still managed to blow my mind. You know, I was just like, but at the time, again, like just being able to.
There were some apps pretty early on.
Well, they were built-in apps, but they didn't open it to developers for at least a year, if not two. But it was at least a full year before. And like, but developers were just like, because everybody was just stoked about this thing. Developers were chomping at the bit to work on it. In terms of that, because now that's like the app thing, like probably makes Apple as much money as selling Macs at this point. But they didn't even like, I think at the time realize it, you know. And just the form factor, they also revolutionized like how software is bought and sold and made. And you know, I mean, it never used like nobody used to give a crap about like applications like software. Like you never, like your mom would never buy software. Like she did, you'd have to like guide her through it. Like maybe she had Word because she needed it for work, and somebody at work had installed it for her or something. Yeah. And now like everybody buys apps, you know, and that was like hugely revolutionary.
Did you ever jailbreak any of your phones?
No, I didn't, because
he loves Apple too much.
That is
not going to go against the army.
But I think that's also part of like why I sort of like Apple stuff. I'm less of a Windows user. Is like I like technology because it will make my life easier because I'm lazy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not somebody who like loves to fiddle with stuff. Yeah. Like I'll know just enough to do what I want to do.
No, me too.
But like I don't want like the hassle of jailbreaking just seemed like a hassle to me.
Yeah,
it was just
me too.
This whole thing, and so I never wanted to deal with that. So I was just like, eventually Apple will let people do that, and I'll just wait 10 years or whatever.
And when they do, they'll make it convenient.
Yeah, exactly. And
there'll be a jailbreaking app.
For that, yeah.
In-app purpose. Every time you want to change your phone, $2.
But so in the end, so it's not to say that like, so I don't think that Apple is the greatest company in the world. Like I don't really feel good about this. Like it's like a total like I'm like an obsessive consumer whore. So it's sort of like, it's kind of a guilty pleasure. And I don't even know why I'm so, like, at this point, like, you know, I don't think in my lifetime there'll be another iPhone. Like, at least, and if there is, I don't think Apple will make it. I just don't think it's going to work that way. I mean, they continue to, like, slowly but surely improve and enhance the things that they do have. And, you know, I'm holding in my hand the Apple Pencil. I bought the iPad Pro on day one, and now I have the Apple Pencil I think this is the most exciting thing to me as an artist since the iPhone, because since the original iPad, I was like, I want to use this thing to draw on. You know, it just seemed like an obvious thing. And it seemed like an obvious thing for Apple to do because they've often catered to creatives. But I think that was, you know, that's me remembering more fondly the days when they needed niche industries, and now they're a mass.
When they had to maintain their 10% market share.
Yeah, and the designers, the design community, I think, like kept them afloat for a long time. And
certainly between the design and printing.
Yeah, and so they catered to that industry, and I think those days are now gone. They're now a mass market product company, and so we're sort of lucky to have gotten this, the iPad Pro and but more specifically the Pencil, which is a stylus, a pressure sensitive stylus. I think
they would have made the iPad Pro anyway.
Maybe, yeah, but the stylus they really didn't have to make. It's definitely not a mass market product, but I think for artists it's huge, and I think maybe they're realizing that for the iPad to succeed, like it needs to cater to niche, because I think there's a lot of niche industries for whom it will work, and I think they're like, well, if we just expand it so that it reaches enough niches, we'll sell enough of these and create enough of a professional app ecosystem or something like that.
Right, yeah, like a global marketplace for creative apps and software that they may not have gotten a cut of before, but now that you have to buy through their store, that's where we get it from.
But if you're thinking about you should go to the Win Apple store if you're an artist and try the Apple Pencil. It will, and I mean, everyone who uses it just gets a big smile on their face and is, I think, impressed for the most part. Would you guys agree? Yes, no?
Absolutely.
I still, it was Max's that I was having trouble making the pressure sensitive work. It may have been the app, it may have been some setting, but
Maybe.
So,
Maybe
how much does the pencil cost?
The pencil costs $100.
Okay.
And the iPad Pro, which it only currently works with the iPad Pro, I'm sure eventually it'll work with all the iPads, maybe the iPhones. But right now it only works with the iPad Pro, which costs like minimum $800, but really like if you get the bells and whistles, like $1,000. So you're looking at like $1,100 probably, or maybe $1,000 all told to have an awesome digital sketchbook, which is a lot of money. And and if it weren't my personal obsession,
if you get a Wacom tablet, it's going to cost that much. And if you have to replace the pen on a Wacom, it's like at least $60.
yeah, they used to be 90.
So I mean, I think it's because again, it's a niche product, and it is, like doesn't involve a lot of technology. Plus, I think over time it'll just get cheaper because they'll smooth out the design if they're mass producing it.
Apple ain't gonna make it cheaper.
Yeah, I think the
biggest
biggest leap that they need to make is like what the Surface is doing, where you can just run straight and this may be Adobe making this happen, treating it like a Cintiq, where it is an interface that directly relates to your computer, to your Mac that you will own to use it. Like it's for the creative stuff, that just seems like another obvious leap. Like if they're going to make the pencil, why don't they just go ahead and make this thing work like a Cintiq?
I mean, they're gonna get there.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's a third-party software that allows you to get pretty close to that experience. And so a Cintiq, for those who don't know, it's a tablet. It's a screen that's also a tablet. So it's a computer's monitor that you can draw directly on, and it'll translate
with a special
into your
digitizing pen.
Yeah, and it'll draw into like Photoshop or any art related app, and so you can already kind of use your iPad in that way, plug it into a computer and use it to control the computer and to draw directly into the computer. But it's sort of limited because it's third-party software. And Apple, because they both also own Mac operating system, could make it so that when you plug in your iPad, boom, it automatically recognizes it as a digitizer. And I think they would just sell more that way, and it wouldn't be probably that hard for them to build that support in. So I'm hoping those kind of things will happen. But I'm kind of part of what I like about using the iPad versus using my computer is it's more fun. I think because it doesn't feel like a computer as much, because it is less pro or whatever, I don't know why, but I just have more fun using it. And when I'm at home, the last thing I want to do is work on my laptop. It just feels like a drag. Whereas like taking out my iPad and sketching on it feels like fun. Like I feel like I'm a kid again, and like I'm just drawing for the fun of it. So I think I'm kind of more hoping that they'll keep, rather than making the Mac be able to do these things, I'm kind of hoping they'll just make iOS, the operating system, their mobile operating system, little by little more feature rich, so that it'll be able to do the same level of stuff but in a different way. Like I want a different approach that's more touch friendly. But it's tough because right now there's not a huge market for it, and it's very hard to create these all brand new apps. You have to spend a lot of time just figuring out how to make it work, and it's kind of the new frontier that doesn't have a huge market. So that's kind of the chicken or the egg
I have
kind
a
of
question
problem
for you. So for the uninitiated, the professional software a lot of us use is Adobe Photoshop for sketching in, or Flash, or Illustrator, or some Adobe software. There are plenty of other good sketchbook things out there. Sketchbook Pro is really good. There's plenty of good ones, but I have yet to find an iOS one that's as robust as one that I used. Here's my question: what do you sketch in when you're using your thing?
Right now, the best app is called Procreate, and it's the most like sort of professional grade. It has a really like fancy brush engine.
Pro's right in the name.
Exactly. And so it has most of what you would expect. It has layers. It has a brush engine, so you can customize brush, and it has lots of pre-built options, but you can also make your own. It has you can export as a layered PSD if you want to work on it back on your computer.
Oh, that's neat. So how do you export? Do you have to kind of email it to yourself?
Cloud or something?
Yeah, it's like cloud syncing. So either you can send it to iCloud Drive or Dropbox or that kind of stuff. That's how you sync it. I think you can probably also save it and then like sync it through iTunes.
Or email it to yourself.
That's pretty lame. Yeah, probably email it, isn't it?
Can you like fax it to a fax and then like print out the code and then scan that?
I don't think you could do that, but I mean, I'm sure like you could probably send it to another app that could then fax it. Right. So there's probably a way you could.
Can you have the Google Drive app on your iPad?
Yes, you
and
can
then drag that into your Google Drive app on your iPad.
You could send it to Google Drive, but not in a drag and drop way. Like right now, it's sort of like Yeah, I mean, iOS is sort of
just teasing, man.
No, but it's true that like iOS is in this sort of like in between place where if you're used to be able to do all these things on the computer, and when you're on iOS, you're like almost kind of do it, but it's this kind of weird roundabout way, and I'm hoping it'll get there, but it's hard because what made it popular is how simple it is, and it's hard to add features without adding complexity, and it's also hard to find new ways of doing lots of different functions, but just through touch interfaces. So there's a lot of figuring out.
Maybe I don't know the limitations of this device, but you know what else is easy to use? The computer you're already used to using. So why can't they just make it that same exact?
That's what Microsoft Surface is,
right?
Effectively, and if you look at real quick, because I've been waiting to jump in, getting in here.
Holt's obsession is butting in.
Yeah, exactly. So Mary's got herself a Microsoft Surface, and it runs the new Microsoft Windows 10, and she's got Photoshop on it, and she does her comic on the Photoshop.
It's like regular Photoshop.
Yep.
Regular Photoshop. And she has, using the interface, built herself buttons that are touch capable. So all the stuff that she would need a keyboard for, her brush changes, her undos, her layer selections, etc., are all on one side, just tip, 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 tap, and she's got it good to go.
That's through a third-party utility install. But again, I mean, that's the advantage of, because Windows is a much more, and I mean, same with Mac OS 10, like they're much more open-ended, what's the word for, operating systems. And so you can just kind of install all kinds of crap on there and do whatever you want. And so that's the big advantage there. But I mean, the downside is that like I don't have fun using. I've tried the Surface and it is really nice. It's a really nice hardware and you can use Photoshop on it. It works great. The digitizer is pretty good and like it's totally like it's totally good, but it's just, I don't know what it is about it, but it's just not fun to use. You can get the job done on it, but it's no fun.
Well, it's because you can't rub the apple the whole time like you like to do. Like rub that little logo.
That's right. And it's also because it's, it's still, when you get down to it, it's still like an old computer interface and it doesn't, there's a lot of things that just don't work that well with it, with a touch interface. It's just kind of awkward to use. It's hard to hit those targets, those drop down menus, etc., because they're really intended for a mouse. And then you start to want a bigger monitor, etc., etc. So I think there is something nice about the simplicity and you sort of have to embrace it. If it doesn't work for your workflow, then you just kind of have to, I mean, that's why right now, like it really is just for fun.
That's my major complaint about an iPad. But I will say, I mean, I'm not here to like pick on your obsession. I think it's I love the way you're framing it, where you're just like, I can't help it, because that's what an obsession is, and I love that.
I'm not saying they're the greatest thing in the world, that
they're even a good company. They just make stuff that you like.
Yeah, and for some reason, like I like reading about it and I like talking about it. I like
absolutely. I respect that because you're talking about it like a real obsession, and I think that's awesome.
And it's like I'm into tech in general, and it's just like kind of a lens through which there's like too much to look at and read at, so it's just sort of like this subsection of that world that I sort of got into.
So if you could do like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style tours of their like Chinese factory where they make these things, would you give Slugworth the secret new iPad, huh? Or would you pass the test, Jules?
I would pass the test.
He would totally
no doubt about it.
The ghost of Steve Jobs would give you the factory.
He could have given Slugworth by jailbreaking his
if you
second
hear that,
phone.
If you're listening to this, Johnny Ive, you can let me into your design lab. Your secrets are safe with me.
Jules, did you get a golden text?
I wish. I didn't even get a golden iPad. I bought the silver one.
But I will say, like, we, without knowing it, I believe, lived through an amazing revolution in technology.
Yeah.
And that is the iPhone. And, they weren't the only ones.
Well, I mean, it was the Jazz Drive, but...
There was a lot that led up to it and blah, 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 and all those people. But really, let's face it was the iPhone that just blew the doors off of personal computing, period. And I think we all carry around computers that are more powerful than, like, the most powerful computer I had in my first
carry them
in
college. Our palm.
Yeah, exactly.
and I think, like, we're at the beginning of the revolution, and we're just starting to see where else it can go. And that's what's exciting.
It's done. The man's in there. It's done.
I mean, at this point, it's just it's body tattoos.
At this point, they're just making toys.
But the man always wants to make more money.
Yeah, they do. But guess what? Revolution and the man don't go together.
The next thing will be like, you've been using your finger to touch this thing. Why should you need anything other than your finger? Computer finger.
It's even better. It's even better. They're going to be like, why use your hands at all? Just put this chip in your brain and control it all like that. Don't worry about those commercials, though, in your dreams.
Yeah. I seriously think they're like that. We might see another crazy revolution like that. I mean, like VR and augmented reality are coming soon. I don't know if those will be revolutionary because I don't know how practical they'll be in day to day.
I feel like those concepts have been around long enough that those can't be that revolutionary.
But it's finally, the technology's finally gotten, like it's gotten a lot better. It's getting a lot more portable. It's getting more cheap enough that now you can get it in, make it a mass consumer product.
Yes, but the average person probably looks at or uses for a real reason their phone 6 times an hour at least.
Yeah.
VR is never going to be anything like that.
Well, but you say that
until we have implants.
No one's going to do that.
Absolutely.
But you say that.
Some people will do that, but it will never be a mass thing.
I don't know. If it's literally like you just stick something on your temple and that's all it takes, and then it's like looking at your iPhone screen in front of your eyes, everyone would do that in a heartbeat.
No, they would.
Absolutely
would not.
Absolutely
would not.
See, I
guarantee they would.
I liken it to, there's going to be a paradigm shift. There's going to be something like, think back, how many times have you had the conversation, what did we do before we had phones? How did we travel? How did we do this? Yeah. Like, I forget how we got directions.
Yeah.
And because you
printed out a map quest.
But wait.
No, before that, you had a map book. Yeah, map books. That was the worst.
So there's that disconnect where we've almost forgotten the technology that, or the lack there. Like, we forgot the mode by which we traveled and gained access of where we were traveling to, because we now rely on this device. And we also, kids don't go outside anymore and don't play anymore because there are different ways of consuming things, and part of that's these.
But also because their parents won't let them.
Yeah, that's great.
Because the world is this dangerous, scary place.
Yeah. Well, it's dangerous and scary because no one's paying attention. They're all looking at their phones, just like as they text and drive.
Like they were paying so much attention to you in the 80s.
It used to be okay to just let your kids run outside and not know what they were doing, and now if you do that, you are a bad parent.
Yeah. But this is another discussion.
Way down into my obsession, bad parenting.
You're obsessed, John.
Well, but I'm saying I don't know, it may not be VR, but there will be some leap in our tech that replaces or changes.
Is going to be like that. That's all I'm saying.
But we've already had
so fast.
We've already had 2 big shifts.
I think in our lifetime, like what computers were like when you were young and what they're like now.
I still feel like the lead up of computers is the lead up to the personal iPhone, to the iPhone. I think that is a part of the same thing. I think that
Eddie, you're what, 300, 400 years old? So you have a little bit different perspective on this.
Yeah. We used to just bang rocks together.
Yeah, I missed them.
I can remember
with a
those
string
days.
in them.
Yeah.
Back when apples were just used for gravity lessons.
Sitting under a tree was really fun.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm actually reading a book right now that's about that time, Isaac Newton's time, and it was like horrible death plague. Like people thought the world was ending, that God was mad at them, and he actually like had that spare time to think about that stuff because they closed down his school because of the plague.
Closed for the plague. Yeah. Isaac Newton is a fascinating guy, but he did this thing. He was experimenting with color, and he wanted to know where color came from, which is an odd thing to think about if you don't. I mean, it's a very abstract thing to consider.
Yeah.
And this was before people even kind of understood how prism worked, the spectrum. But he took a pin and stuck it in his eye, like as far as it would go, to see if that would eliminate color. Like he was experimenting on himself by putting a bodkin in his eye in different spots. That was that's this guy's science.
I'm glad he did that.
Yeah.
So that I didn't have to.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about that. Like we think like these are exciting times, but like back then, like everything was unknown, and that's why like regular people could be scientists. You just had to be like interested in stuff.
Well, he wasn't a regular person.
He was a crazy guy.
But no, he was a mega genius to level that like we rarely would ever see in the human race.
And only a genius would think to put a needle in his eye.
No, but there's gonna come a time when people are gonna think that about this time. You know what I mean? That's always the way it is. It's just like.
But that was
they vaccinated themselves.
But that was the beginning of science. You know what I mean? It was the beginning of the scientific method.
Since humans Newton's looked up at the sky is the beginning of science. Science has always been.
No.
Yes.
No.
That you could say. But
there's a difference between like looking and being like, "Wow, I wonder,"
No.
and coming
Wow, I
up with a
wonder
way.
is science. That is
No, that is not science.
Absolutely.
No, that is science. Is not making up some BS story about why the skies are up there.
Yes, but
it's actually coming up with a method and a rigorous discipline for how to answer these questions.
so there was no science before the scientific method was created.
No, it wasn't a field of study. It was just like people like
No.
making stuff
Figuring things out is science. That's
I think it's naturalism. I think is what it is.
Yeah. So the let's see, when did the scientific method as a true methodology become apparent? I think it was like as a written down thing. I believe it was the
But I mean, there was a lot
late
of work.
1800s.
But there was a lot of work that
So
went
Copernicus.
No.
Galileo.
That still counted, but they were
Still counted. Oh, sorry. Good. Thanks. Thankfully, we're maintaining that. It's
they
not
were
like
working up to. All right, sorry, I don't know how we got to
I didn't
this one.
strike them off the record.
I think we need to wrap this up.
Okay, you're right.
It's round table. Eddie, what's your Mac story?
My Mac story. I kind of just jumped on I think the bandwagon. Probably right when the first iPhone came out. There was like a year where only a few people had it.
But you had to have had.
I had an
as a
iPod.
filmmaker. As
I
a
had an
filmmaker,
iPod.
you were using an Apple, were you not? Like a
I
Mac?
bought, I remember buying my first, it was like when the iBook became a G4.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think a lot of folks had. That was my first Apple toy. And then I worked on the final season of The Sopranos, and the crew gift they gave everybody was an iPad Nano that had the logo etched into the back. And I had never owned an iPod before, and that was the most exciting thing in the entire world.
By that time, Jules had 3 of them.
Yeah.
No,
The Nano?
Well, the Nano, it was
I had one.
but
You
not
had the
not the little square Nano, the skinny long one looked
tall
like a
one.
TV remote Nano.
See, I had the little square one. I was not I was a late adopter to the iPod.
I had one of the thicker, fat. I still have that thing. It's like a little portable hard drive now.
Yeah. I had one of those as well. I bought that years later when I was like, oh, this iPad Nano is great, but I can only put 10 albums on it.
No, I was seriously waiting for the iPod. I was like, I don't want to carry a phone and this thing.
Yeah.
I want them to be together.
Well, I will say this: I witnessed this that happened to Julian. He had the iPod Nano, washed it in his washing machine, dried it out, and it worked.
Wow.
Thank God.
I had my first accident with an iPhone over the summer, dropped it in a pool while I had a waterproof case on it, but the little trap door at the bottom was open. Tried the rice in the bag, and it did not work. It did not work.
I think that works if you get it wet in your pocket or something like that. If you drop it in a pool, that sucker's
Everyone
done.
was like, "Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be great. It'll work. It'll turn right on in the morning."
I've read stories of people some guy dropped it to the bottom of a lake and he did the rice method and it worked.
Yeah, if you're cooking rice and you use too much water, you throw a few iPads in.
Soak that water right up.
Yeah. Keith, what about you?
Mac. Go all the way back. So in the 7th grade, I think, we moved to our new elementary school when I was a kid. It was elementary and middle school at that time. And our computer labs had Apple IIs, monochrome screen. So we played all of our Oregon Trail on there and stuff like that. But computers to me at that point was just that's what you play video games on, and sometimes you use that one program where you plot the points by numeric value.
Logo?
Is it called Logo?
Yeah, with the turtle.
Yeah, so we had to do that for a class project, and I made some dumb thing with an army tank or something. But my cousin, who you guys have met, and my good friend, they actually were animating in Logo.
Yeah, you can animate in Logo. Right?
Yeah, it was amazing. And to me, plotting that stuff out was so arduous. And they did it for every frame, you know? It's crazy. When I got into typing class in high school, those were Windows machines. But then when I got into community college and was taking some computer art classes, that's when it's just like you got no choice. It's just Apple, and it really seemed like that. Even though you could run this software on this other stuff, and in fact, the 3D software we were doing was on a sophisticated PC. But yeah, we were using
was it
not
3D
Soft
Studio
Image.
Max?
We were using it was the predecessor to Maya called Alias Wavefront. Well, Alias and Wavefront were two companies that combined Maya. Blah blah blah. So I remember I was in the computer lab. We were working on, at the time, a version of Photoshop that didn't have layers. So it was Photoshop that just you did all your manipulation through channels. And this was in 90. I mean, I don't know when it came out, but we were doing this in 1996, I believe. And my teacher at the time brought in the Macintosh with, oh my God, a gig of storage space. What are we ever gonna do to fill up an entire gig? Throw all your disks away. They got a gig of hard drive space. So that was in, and let's see, my first computer I ever had that I owned was a hand-me-down from somebody. It was an Apple laptop, and then that got traded up to another Apple, like some kind of weird Apple with the long screen.
Oh yeah,
like some kind of medical one or something like this. And I never did anything either of those. I kept thinking like, one of these days I'll install some stuff, but never did. And then I got another hand-me-down iMac when I moved to Brooklyn, and that one was I was hooked like that. And
was that the like see-through plastic design?
Not the see-through one, the one with the pink.
Yeah.
But
it was still that like yeah.
Yep. And then finally beginning of this year, I bought my first brand new Apple Macintosh of my entire life. It took me this long. I've been using these things professionally and not so professionally all this time, and I finally bought one in an Apple Mini.
Well, that reminds me, I did forget, like, the first, in high school, I had saved a bunch of money, and I bought my first Mac. It was Performa 405, and this was the dark days of Apple, and it kind of sucked. I bought it, and I was like, this is kind of lame.
I forgot which one was the Performa. Which one was that?
They were
it just looked like a beige box.
Yeah, it was the bunch of beige boxes, and yeah, it just wasn't too exciting.
We had a diehard one at the computer lab at my community college called the Quadra.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That thing was really good.
I was a Windows person straight through. Commodore, right into Windows. And Mac, I was not, like, even, I don't know. I was a classic, like, why does Mac have a handle? So you can carry it to the dump.
Yeah. I
like, that was
jokes.
Most of the programs we used, I was mad when we had to use Macs and stuff.
I remember. Well, you used to hang out, I mean, a fellow I mentioned in the
RJ.
Previous podcasts a couple weeks ago, RJ, he was, like, serious, built my own computer kind of thing. I'm sure he still is, but so I could tell coming from those circles, like, that you don't like the limitations of Mac being like boxed in.
But it's funny, most of my friends in high school were also like, they were like, some of them were coding and PC guys, and I remember they would like download these ROMs from like the internet, and they were just like these graphics demos of like people, like people just had coded it all on one page, and it ran like real time graphics of a spaceship, and they were really into all this stuff, and I was just kind of like, that's above my head. I just want to use computers. I don't want to make them. That was kind of like how.
Yeah,
but you use Apple now.
Yeah, I mean, again, but there are some things where it's just now Flash is going to be gone soon. Flash is going to be Adobe Animate or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
but
just found out. Breaking news.
Flash works best on a PC, and it always has.
I beg to differ at this point. I mean, I would say.
I mean, now
I would say about 6 years ago that's probably true, but I've been using it steadily on an Apple for the past.
I think you have like
several years, and it's
basically like an equivalent technology, like my laptop here that we're recording on, running an Apple. It's an Air or something on a cheaper, like lower rent Dell laptop. Flash will run better. It's just a architecture thing. Yes, on a Pro, on a trash can, it'll look.
I don't know if you've
good.
actually tried that. I don't think that you've tried that since they've gone to 64-bit. I imagine once they went to a 64-bit framework that it's on par both sides. That was I think CC13.
Yeah, I still have had playback issues in the CC, but that's
getting technical. But Holt is Holt's a PC.
Yeah, but I have all the iPhones. I don't
Yeah.
get into the Nexi or whatever.
I like
They
Ford.
still
I
get-
like Chevy.
They still get people because they still make way better hardware for
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
But you know, professional wise, Mac is definitely like losing steam. Like the Mac Pros have not been updated in a while.
Yeah, that's
et
really
cetera.
tough.
And for if you want to do anything 3D, pretty much run PC. But honestly, what's cool is at this point, if you're using professional software, once you're in the software, it really doesn't matter what platform you're on, as long as it runs well. Like I don't really care personally.
Yeah, I think it's the render. It's when you need the real heavy processing rendering stuff. And if you're at a studio system, hopefully they have some work versus like if you're at home doing this stuff, an independent or freelance like offsite 3D guy, you're probably running a nice PC, so you can actually.
All right.
Yeah. Oof. All right. Mac-tastic, Jules.
Probably was not new to you, but
Well, maybe who
you know,
knows? They may
but
have just
I'm-
come out of a coma.
Well, the pencil, I'm sure is new to a lot.
Yeah.
That's right. And
That's
The
Listen.
iPad Pro, I'm sure that's new to a lot of people.
you know, it's
Yeah.
my obsession is my obsession.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't.
By the time we put this thing out, maybe the iPad prosumer is out.
You know what was new to me is that Holt is sponsored by Bill Gates.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bill Gates has infiltrated us, and he's
That's right.
Yep.
He's here to support his foundation.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you trying to help those poor
Good
people.
job drinking clean water.
We want to give them jobs making iPhones.
Exactly. Under great conditions.
Anyway, thank you, Jules, for bringing
That's right.
your obsession. And honestly, I think out of our shows the past couple of weeks, yours was the most realistic obsession in that you're like,
I'm
I
really
can't help
obsessed.
myself. I can't help myself. Please, someone help me.
I think
I'm
Holt
obsessed.
was downplaying his obsession.
Oh, well, yes, but see,
He's trying to play it cool.
Here's Holt's trick. He's playing the obsession of several years ago, so it seems less obsessive now.
That's right. That's right.
I have,
And
I have
me,
nothing to live for right
my
now.
thing- and the way I did it was just pretend like I don't ever get obsessed. So
Touch, of course, is the primary method of interaction with iPad. To enhance what's possible with multi-touch and to allow for a new level of precision with iPad Pro, we've designed Apple Pencil. This began...
yeah, next week we're gonna hear from Eddy's obsession.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's
That's
gonna be
dark.
juicy.
That's dark. If you want to learn, maybe you're obsessed with the New to You show, where could you learn more about it?
Man,
Well,
you poor,
newtoyou.com.
unfortunate
Yeah.
soul.
newtoyou.com, newtoyoushow.com, or on Twitter at newtoyoushow. Those are two great places to learn more about us. You can find us on iTunes, share, subscribe. If you need a new app,
Leave a comment, maybe. I don't know.
I
if you
would
want to.
recommend-
If you're obsessed, I would.
I'd recommend Overcast. I like that app for if you're listening to iPads, pods, things.
I never even heard of it.
iPad
It's
casts.
a great podcast thing.
It's good.
Ah, it's
Yeah.
an Apple thing.
It's got in-app purchases.
Yeah,
too.
Whoa.
it's made by Marco Arment, who is also has an Apple podcast.
Oh, perfect. Maybe
he makes-
he'll hear this and think, I gotta have that Julian guy on.
He makes podcasts, and he makes a podcasting app.
All right. So, Jules, where
Beautiful.
can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Beautiful Jules.
Beautiful Jules /MacLover /
Yeah.
No, hashtag iPad Pro.
hashtag. Yeah.
Hashtag I love my Apple Pencil.
Touch my pencil. Keith, what about you? Where can they find you?
You can see some of my artwork on Tumblr at earthlingkeith.tumblr.com.
All right.
And that's where you can find me.
Eddie, what about you? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Tumblr as well at eddyvallante.tumblr.com.
All right. And John, you can find me at Lord Joho. Again, if you want to find more about this show, you can go to newtoyoushow.com or go on Twitter at newtoyoushow. We'll have links to the content, and you'll be able to find previous episodes there or on iTunes. Thanks again for listening. It may not be new, but maybe it was new to you.
I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial or error, just emotion when I do this. Focus on each beat, more so than you're wasting time in front of your television. Maybe this pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.